In our society, there's this odd belief that aiding others is invariably the noble path. From a young age, we are conditioned to think that true goodness, spiritual depth, or compassion means endlessly agreeing, endlessly offering, and staying perpetually open. Should you waver, reflect, or even establish limits, suddenly you're flawed, self-centered, lacking warmth. Yet imagine if I revealed that this whole mindset is flipped upside down. Suppose the relentless urge to aid all, mend all, and save all isn't genuine affection, but rather meddling, an intrusion that blocks the essential growth life intends. Consider this. By repeatedly shielding folks from the fallout of their decisions, what do you truly achieve? You're not supporting them, you're confining them, blocking their growth, inserting yourself as a barrier to the insights born solely from trials. I'm not advocating for detachment or apathy. That'd swing to the opposite pole, right? It's not about abandoning concern, but about the manner of that concern, and crucially, selecting where to invest your vitality. After all, certain individuals will sap you completely, drawing endlessly without satisfaction, regardless of your generosity. The real sorrow isn't their consumption, it's how you're stunting their development. Allow me to outline 7 kinds of people worth spotting, not to criticize or dismiss, but to safeguard your own resources and let them confront the realities needed for awakening. First up, the persistently idle. Distinguish between those battling hardships and those who've surrendered. The fighter takes your aid as a launch pad toward progress, but the idle one turns it into a cradle of ease. They've opted, deliberately or otherwise, to deem existence too arduous, expecting others to bear the load. Once you intervene, you fill that role, becoming their crutch, not due to their incapacity, but because they've learned help arrives unbidden. Observe the wild. A parent bird won't feed a fledgling that won't gape. A plant won't sustain a barren limb. Nature demands productivity. Non-contributors fade, not from harshness, but necessity. The idle always have justifications, their tough upbringing, misfortune, biased odds, and parts may ring true. But probe deeper. What actions are they pursuing today, even minor ones, to shift their plight? Or are they just biding time for a savior? Aiding those unwilling to self-aid strips them of treasures, the thrill of personal triumph, the resilience forged in adversity, the revelation of their potential. Many of you've shouldered others for ages, covering costs, untangling woes, mopping up chaos, and labeled it benevolence. But suppose your goodwill is fostering fragility. What if your support is the exact obstacle to their independence? The idle must sense deprivation, unease, the raw outcomes of inaction, for only when inertia's ache outweighs transformations does momentum build. Second, the endlessly thankless. Ever seen someone get a remarkable boon and dismiss it like trash? You might offer hours, funds, effort, even your soul, and they snatch it casually. No gratitude, no nod, no respect. This isn't chance, it's a core flaw. Appreciation goes beyond politeness. It's proof of seeing oneself in a broader tapestry. The thankful grasp that boons, presents, and favors aren't entitlements but generous acts, warranting honor. The thankless, though, act as if the universe and you owe them. They view your aid as due, growing bolder with each donation. Odd twist, huh? The deeper you invest, the shallower their regard. I once knew a guy who aided a friend. He covered his buddy's rent for 6 months in a row. Every single month, he gave up his own ease just to guarantee that his pal had a place to stay. And guess what the friend did in return? He griped endlessly. He whined about the space being cramped. He moaned that the area wasn't posh enough. He fussed over putting up with it all when others enjoyed so much more. He never once expressed gratitude. He never even noted the personal cost involved. Then, once those 6 months were up, and the guy couldn't keep supporting him, what went down? The friend turned furious. He acted like he'd been stabbed in the back, treating the support as some obligation that was now being wrongly enforced. That's how the ungrateful operate. They mistake compassion for vulnerability. They view giving as a chance to exploit. And they'll keep grabbing and grabbing until they've emptied you completely. Extending aid to someone so thankless isn't like planting seeds for growth. It's more like hurling them into an endless void. Toss in as much as you like. The void stays insatiable. Number 3, the smug and superior types. Some folks aren't after your support at all. They crave your approval. They don't seek your insights. They just want you to echo their own convictions. And if you ever suggest something that questions their self-image, they'll shut you out completely. The smug individual isn't hurting from ignorance. Their problem is overwhelming ego. They assume they have it all figured out. They insist their approach is the only correct one. Anyone hinting at alternatives is just mistaken. Pride's a tricky beast. It poses as assurance, but really, it's rooted in dread. The smug one fears being incorrect because their whole persona rests on always being spot on. If they confess ignorance or accept assistance, their core starts to fracture. So instead, they dig in harder. They shield themselves, they quarrel, they dismiss. You can't reach someone like that. Not due to their hopelessness, but because they deny needing any aid. Until they grasp that truth on their own, whatever you provide goes to waste. Jesus turned from such individuals. He didn't pursue them. He didn't plead for their attention. He just delivered the necessary message and kept going, grasping a key truth. You can't impose insight on those wedded to their folly. The smug must stumble. They need to face the fallout from their hubris. They have to crash down firmly enough to glance skyward and see their knowledge is incomplete. Only in that moment of humility, when they're shattered, will they open up to assistance. Number 4, the persistently malicious. I need to tread lightly on this, since our era shies away from terms like malicious or vile. We opt for gentler words. We call them challenged or misjudged. But certain people out there aren't lost. They fully understand their actions and pursue them regardless. The malicious isn't just erring now and then. We all slip up. The malicious has turned malice into their lifestyle. They deceive, they swindle, they scheme, they injure without regret. And if called out, they don't reform. They rationalize. Assisting a malicious type makes you a co-conspirator. You fuel their habits. You supply the means for more damage. And here's the truth. They'll take your offering not for redemption, but to plunge further into malice. That's why ancient teachings from various societies caution against backing evildoers. It's not a shortage of empathy. It's knowing some have picked a route toward ruin, and if you attempt to yank them from it, they'll drag you along instead. The malicious doesn't seek rescue. They desire strength. They hope for backers to bankroll their plots, shield their deceptions, tidy their chaos. Step into that, and you're not aiding them. You're aligning with shadows. Number 5, the relentlessly unwise. Unwisdom isn't about low smarts. It's about rejecting growth. They repeat the identical errors time and again. They brush off guidance. They spurn knowledge. They keep grabbing the scorching burner, then puzzle over the blisters. The gap between the savvy and the unwise boils down to this. The savvy absorbs lessons from what happens. The unwise skips that step. What complicates it most is this. The unwise often shows up at your door in turmoil. They'll be in a bind. They'll be frantic. Your compassion will stir. You'll itch to step in. You'll yearn to pull them free. But examine their past, and a clear cycle emerges. This isn't their initial meltdown. This isn't the debut rescue call. Actually, they've landed in this very spot. You've encountered this pattern repeatedly in the past. Whenever assistance came their way, they inevitably reverted to the very habits that landed them in hot water initially. A fool resembles someone floundering in the sea, rejecting the flotation device tossed their way. Rather, they flail wildly, creating waves and submerge again. Should you dive in for the rescue, they'll drag you down alongside. Rescuing a fool proves impossible. Life alone holds the power to instruct them. Solely, the outcomes of their decisions can shatter their obstinacy. Persistent interference on your part merely blocks those outcomes from taking effect. Sixth on the list, the cunning manipulator. Among all these archetypes, the manipulator ranks as the slyest threat, mainly because spotting them is so challenging. They avoid outright requests. Instead, they arrive bearing tales. They never seize directly from you. They craft situations where you eagerly offer. Adept at reading people, the manipulator grasps that compassionate folks yearn to assist. They realize that empathetic individuals bristle with remorse upon refusing. This insight becomes their sharpest tool. They'll whisper precisely the words that soothe your soul. They'll tug at your feelings. They'll leave you sensing uniqueness, value, and significance until suddenly you're performing favors for them you'd deny to others. The manipulator adapts like a chameleon. To one audience, they pose as the sufferer. To the next, the savior. Their narrative shifts to suit the listener. Cross-check accounts with fellow victims, and inconsistencies emerge. Aiding a manipulator doesn't support someone truly distressed. It sustains their elaborate scheme. It supplies fuel for their ongoing deceptions. The instant you halt your contributions, the second you pierce their facade, expect retaliation. They'll recast you as the antagonist, spread tales of your betrayal to mutual contacts, and swiftly seek fresh prey. Seventh, the defiant nonconformist. Lastly, consider those who grasp the better path yet stubbornly cling to the worse. Lessons have been imparted, cautions issued, errors rectified. Yet indifference reigns. They've opted deliberately for self-sabotage, and no words or actions from you will sway them. This type isn't clueless, they're rebellious. Righteousness is clear to them, but wrongdoing holds greater appeal. Attempts to guide them yield superficial agreement, nods, grins, and affirmations. But once out of sight, old patterns resurface. Releasing such individuals tests your resolve most as their untapped promise glimmers. You envision their transformation with just a spark of will. Thus, hope lingers, faith persists, that alteration looms this round, yet it eludes. The defiant soul requires internal motivation for reform. Absent that self-driven urge, endless support yields nothing. You can't crave their recovery more fiercely than they do. You can't champion their liberation with greater vigor than theirs. Such efforts will deplete you utterly, leaving them unaltered. So, how do we navigate this insight? Shall we harden into apathy? Abandon aid entirely? Absolutely not. Instead, cultivate sharp judgment. Discern the truly beleaguered from the chronically mired. Differentiate the one seeking a boost from the one angling for a handout. View reality unclouded, free of bias, yet devoid of fantasy. Genuine empathy avoids indulgence. At times, it demands withdrawal, granting space for choices to bear fruit. For frequently, amid trials, struggles, and rock bottom, awakening dawns. Investing in worthy recipients bears results. Nurturing fertile ground sparks progress. Yet directing efforts toward the unwilling, the unchanged, the exploiters who sap your vitality yields only squander. Guard your vitality jealously. Your hours dwindle, Your assets remain scarce. Spend them judiciously. Not all warrant your support. Far from harshness, this reflects sagacity. Reflect now. Whom am I propping up, whom I ought to release? Whom am I salvaging, who must stumble? Whom am I indulging, who requires reckoning with their repercussions? Upon discovery, summon the resolve to retreat, not fueled by fury or bitterness, but rooted in the wisdom that the deepest kindness may involve permitting full accountability. Ultimately, salvation lies beyond your grasp. You can merely illuminate the route. Whether they tread it rests wholly with them.